Well, NASA just released new images of 3i Atlas, and honestly, this just exposed probably the wickedest anomaly we've seen yet, because the images reveal a jet that is pointing in a direction that should not be physically possible for a natural comet. And I don't just mean the sunward jet we were seeing until now. So in this video, I'll break down what these new images actually reveal, and why Avi Loeb is saying this could be the proof we have been waiting for. Because what we're seeing right now doesn't just challenge our understanding of comets, it challenges our understanding of what travels between the stars. The images came from multiple sources between November 11th and November 17th, 2025. Observers from Japan, Thailand, New Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Canada all captured the same phenomenon, and they all show something that shouldn't exist according to the physics we know. So on October 2nd, 3i Atlas flew by Mars at about 29 million kilometers away. That sounds far, but in space terms, that's a pretty close shave. Now, orbiting around Mars is a NASA spacecraft called the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. On board that spacecraft is a camera called HiRISE, and HiRISE is basically the most powerful spy camera we have ever sent to another planet. So when 3i Atlas flew by, NASA turned this high-powered camera away from Mars and pointed it right at our mysterious visitor. We've been waiting for more than a month for these images to be processed and released. And now that they're here, they show us something we could not see from Earth. From Earth, we are looking at the object from one specific angle, but the camera around Mars was looking at it from a completely different angle. And this gave us a side view of the object that we couldn't get from here. This side view revealed that the weird jet we were seeing earlier isn't doing what we thought it was doing. For months, we've been looking at images showing what appears to be a jet pointing toward the sun. Back when Hubble took images in July, the object was still heading toward the sun from far away. At that point in its journey, the direction toward the sun and the direction of motion were almost the same. So when we saw the forward-pointing jet, we thought, okay, maybe it is some unusual solar heating effect. But at the time of these images, the direction toward the sun and the direction of travel were no longer the same. The HiRISE camera caught it from a totally different viewing angle, and now we can finally see what was really happening. The jet here is not pointing toward or away from the sun, it is pointing perpendicular to the sun, and the sunward jet is also there, extended ahead of the object in the direction it is traveling. Now a jet is the stuff shooting out of the comet, and the tail is the leftover cloud of smoke that trails behind it. There are three forces that control comet tails and jets: solar heating, solar radiation pressure, and the solar wind. Notice what they all have in common. They all come from the sun. Solar heating happens when sunlight hits a comet and it heats up pockets of ice on the comet's surface. The ice turns directly into gas without melting. The gas shoots out and creates jets pointing back toward the light source. So if a comet's jet is pointing toward the sun, it is definitely caused by solar heating. Now, solar radiation pressure is different. Light from the sun actually pushes on the tiny dust particles released from the comet due to solar heating. So dust tails always point directly away from the sun no matter which way the comet is moving. If a comet is traveling toward the sun, the tail trails behind it. If a comet is traveling away from the sun, the tail still points away from the sun. Either way, the tail is always in the anti-sun direction. Now, the solar wind is a stream of charged particles flowing out from the sun. It pushes gas away from the sun just like radiation pressure pushes dust. So gas tails also always point away from the sun. Every single one of these forces is sun-related. The sun is the dominant source of energy and momentum acting on comets. So what happens if you have a jet pointing perpendicular to the sun? That means it is not being pushed by solar radiation pressure, it is not being blown by solar wind, and it cannot be caused by solar heating. There is no known natural mechanism to create this phenomenon. You might think, okay, maybe the jet is just slightly off angle. Maybe it is 45 degrees from the sun, and we are making too big a deal out of this. But perpendicular means 90 degrees. It means the jet is pointing at a right angle to the direction of the sun. Now, this is not a small effect we are talking about. The jet extends for thousands of miles. This is a major structure that has been maintained across a huge distance in space. For it to stay collimated and pointed perpendicular to the sun while the comet is moving is just not something natural processes can do. But comets rotate as they travel through space. So what if the comet is rotating and a jet that started pointing at the sun got swung around to the side as the comet rotated? This does happen, we see it on some comets, but here is the problem. When rotation creates sideways jets, they create spiral patterns. The jet sweeps across the sky like water from a spinning sprinkler. You get a curved tail or a spiral structure. 3i Atlas is rotating with a period of about 16 hours. We know this from light curve analysis, so if a solar heated jet was being swung sideways by rotation, we would see it curve and spiral. We would not see a straight collimated jet locked at 90 degrees to the sun extending this far. Even though it's a little blurry, the image shows a straight structure pointing perpendicular to the sun. For this to happen, the source of the jet would need to be continuously active and continuously oriented perpendicular to the sun, even as the comet rotates. That requires either a very specific geometric configuration that somehow stays locked to the sun direction, which makes no sense, or as Avi Loeb suggests, it requires active control. We've studied thousands of comets. We have seen every kind of weird tail configuration you can imagine. Curved tails, split tails, disconnection events where the tail breaks off, anti-tails that appear to point toward the sun due to viewing geometry. But we have never seen a jet that is confirmed to be perpendicular to the sun. Every time we thought we saw something like this, it turned out to be a viewing angle effect. When we looked from a different position or waited for the geometry to change, the jet would reveal itself to be either sun-facing or sun-trailing. The high-rise image is special because Mars was in the perfect position to see the true three-dimensional geometry. The camera caught 3i Atlas from the side while the sun was in a totally different direction. There is no viewing angle trick here. The jet really is perpendicular. Let me give you some context. Shoemaker Levy 9 broke apart and had complex tail structures, but they were all sun-oriented. Hale-Bopp had multiple jets from different active regions, but every single one was explainable by solar heating of rotating surface features. Oumuamua never showed any jet at all, which is part of why it was controversial. But 3i Atlas is doing something completely new, and it's not just the perpendicular jet. Recent images from amateur astronomers show additional anomalies that make this even stranger. Observers like Satoru Murata from New Mexico, Efrain Morales from Puerto Rico, and teams from Canada's NEOSAT have all captured images showing the same features. A forward-facing jet with a distinct reddish hue, multiple backward jets with greenish and bluish tones, and the object remaining structurally intact despite the enormous forces these jets should be creating. The color difference alone is remarkable. Why would jets in opposite directions have different colors? Different colors mean different compositions, different temperatures, or different physical processes. A single natural comet shouldn't produce such stark color variations in different directions. Now let's talk about energy. To produce the jets we're seeing, Atlas needs to expel massive amounts of material. We're talking about billions of tons over the course of weeks. For this to happen through natural sublimation, ice turning directly into gas, the object would need to absorb enormous amounts of solar energy. The problem is that the energy required doesn't match the size of the object. High-resolution images from Hubble and other telescopes give us an estimate of Atlas's size. Based on those estimates, the surface area available to absorb sunlight is simply not large enough to power jets of this magnitude through solar heating alone. To put it in numbers, the energy required is in the range of 16 to 18 digits. That's quadrillions of joules. For a nucleus the size we're seeing to absorb that much energy from the Sun, at the distance Atlas was at perihelion, it would need a surface area thousands of times larger than what we observe. This is a fundamental problem. The math doesn't work. Either our estimates of the object's size are wildly wrong, or the jets aren't being powered by solar heating. Here's another problem. Atlas rotates with a period of about 16 hours. That's relatively slow, but it's still rotating. If the jets were caused by active regions on the surface, pockets of ice that sublimate when exposed to sunlight, those jets should rotate with the object. As the active regions turn into and out of sunlight, the jets should appear, disappear, and sweep across space. This creates spiral patterns in the coma and tail. We see this in many comets. It's a natural consequence of rotation plus outgassing. But Atlas doesn't do this. The jets remain stable, collimated, and directional over long periods. They don't spiral, they don't sweep. They maintain their orientation despite the rotation. How is this possible? If the jets are tied to surface features, they should rotate with the surface. If they're not tied to surface features, what's producing them? One possibility is that the jets are somehow decoupled from the rotation, but what mechanism allows that? Another possibility is that the jets are actively controlled or directed by some mechanism that compensates for rotation. That sounds like propulsion. That sounds like technology. Let's talk about what didn't happen. Either Atlas is far more structurally robust than a typical comet, perhaps a solid monolithic body rather than a rubble pile, or the jets aren't producing the mechanical stresses we think they are. If Atlas is a solid body, it's not a typical comet. Comets are loosely bound aggregates of ice and dust. Solid bodies are asteroids or differentiated objects. But asteroids don't produce jets. If the jets aren't producing mechanical stress, then they're not conventional outgassing. There's something else. Let me lay out the 12 anomalies that make Atlas unlike anything we've seen before. These aren't minor oddities. These are fundamental problems with the natural comet explanation. 1. Retrograde trajectory aligned with the ecliptic plane. Atlas is moving backward relative to planetary motion, yet it stays perfectly aligned with the plane where planets orbit. The statistical probability of this happening by chance is extremely low. 2. Sunward jets and anti-tail not attributable to viewing angle. Multiple observers from different locations confirm jets pointing toward the sun. This defies basic cometary physics where tails always point away from the sun. 3. Perpendicular jet confirmed by Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. The high-rise camera caught Atlas from a side angle, revealing a jet pointing 90 degrees to the sun direction. No known natural mechanism can produce this. 4. Nucleus mass far larger than previous interstellar objects while maintaining high velocity. Atlas is significantly more massive than Oumuamua or 2I Borisov, yet it maintains interstellar speeds. This combination is difficult to explain naturally. 5. Arrival timing enabling close approaches to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. The trajectory brought Atlas near multiple planets at times that maximize observational opportunities. If planned, it would be brilliant. If coincidence, it's remarkable. 6. Gas plume containing unusually high nickel content. Spectroscopic analysis revealed nickel levels far higher than expected in typical cometary material. Nickel is typically locked in metallic cores, not icy comets. 7. Plume with very little water, approximately 4% by mass. Most comets are primarily water ice. Atlas has almost none. This alone makes it an extreme outlier. 8. Extreme negative, unprecedented optical polarization. The light reflected from Atlas shows polarization characteristics never before recorded in any natural object. This suggests unique surface or particle properties. 9. Arrival direction near the WOW signal region. Atlas's trajectory traces back to approximately the same region of space where the famous 1977 WOW signal was detected. Coincidence? Maybe, but it adds to the intrigue. 10. Rapid brightening with increasingly blue tone, bluer than the reference star. As Atlas approached perihelion, it changed color in ways inconsistent with thermal models of cometary outgassing. 11. Jets requiring an absorbing area incompatible with estimated nuclear size. The energy needed to produce the observed jets would require a surface area far larger than what high-resolution imaging suggests the nucleus actually has. 12. Non-gravitational acceleration implying massive mass loss of about 13% with no detectable debris cloud. Atlas is accelerating in ways that suggest it's losing significant mass, yet we don't see the expected debris cloud. Where is the material going? Each anomaly is serious. Together, they form a pattern that simply does not fit any natural explanation we have. Given all of this, we're left with three main hypotheses. Let's be clear about what each one means and what evidence supports it. Hypothesis 1, exotic natural comet. This is the conservative explanation. Maybe Atlas represents a type of comet we've never encountered before. Maybe it formed in a region of space with unusual chemistry. Maybe it has internal structures or thermal properties that produce these strange behaviors. The problem is that this hypothesis has to explain every single anomaly: the perpendicular jet, the color differences, the energy problem, the rotation paradox, the structural integrity. That's a lot to explain with maybe it's just unusual. Hypothesis 2, technological artifact. This is the bold hypothesis that Avi Loeb and others are proposing. Maybe Atlas is an artificial object, a probe sent by another civilization to explore our solar system. This would explain the perpendicular jet as a thruster. It would explain the non-gravitational acceleration as propulsion. It would explain the unusual composition as industrial materials. It would explain the trajectory as a planned route. The problem with this hypothesis is that it's extraordinary. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but the evidence is mounting. Hypothesis 3, plasma-based entity. This is the most radical hypothesis. Maybe Atlas is a form of life we've never imagined, a self-organized plasma structure that can move, interact with electromagnetic fields, and maintain coherence in space. This would explain the color changes as responses to the solar wind. It would explain the jets as electromagnetic interactions. It would explain the structural integrity as self-organization rather than mechanical strength. The problem with this hypothesis is that it requires redefining what we mean by life. But if chemistry can produce life, why not plasma physics? Avi Loeb thinks this is a technological object. And even though I disagree, I think NASA really should have talked about the anomalies that we can't explain instead of the basic stuff everyone already knows. Loeb has been vocal about the need for serious scientific investigation of Atlas. He's called for dedicated observation campaigns, spectroscopic analysis, and even a probe mission to intercept the object before it leaves the solar system. His argument is simple. If there's even a small chance that Atlas is artificial, we have a responsibility to investigate. The potential payoff, confirming the existence of extraterrestrial technology, would be the most important discovery in human history. Critics say Loeb is jumping to conclusions. They say he's letting his desire for a dramatic discovery cloud his scientific judgment. But Loeb counters that dismissing the possibility without investigation is equally unscientific. The truth is, we won't know unless we look. And right now, we're not looking hard enough. So what needs to happen? First, we need more observations. Every telescope that can point at Atlas should be doing so. We need images in multiple wavelengths. We need spectroscopy to determine composition. We need astrometry to track its trajectory with extreme precision. Second, we need transparency. If we're going to investigate this properly, we need to act now. Let's think about what this means if any of the unconventional hypotheses are correct. If Atlas is technological, it means we're not alone. It means another civilization has achieved interstellar travel and is exploring the galaxy. It also means they're interested in us. The trajectory that brought Atlas through our solar system, past multiple planets, at a time when we have the technology to observe it, that's either an incredible coincidence or it's intentional. If Atlas is a plasma-based life form, it means life is far more diverse than we imagined. It means the universe might be teeming with forms of life we've never considered because we've been too focused on carbon-based chemistry. Either way, it fundamentally changes our place in the universe. We're not just observers, we're participants in a much larger story. Folks, something wicked is happening with 3i Atlas. The new images reveal anomalies that cannot be explained.
Right, so there are some surprises about this object. It came along the plane of the planets around the sun, as if it is on a reconnaissance mission. And that's why it's so easy to observe it from months. NASA should be grateful if this is just an icy rock. We were extremely fortunate that, the chance of that happening is 1 in 500 for it to lie in that plane. Also has jets coming from it in all directions, not just in the direction of the sun.
A jet pointing perpendicular to the sun. Color differences between jets in opposite directions. energy requirements that don't match the object size, structural integrity that defies the forces acting on it. We have three main hypotheses: an exotic natural comet, a technological artifact, a plasma-based entity. None of them is proven. All of them deserve investigation. What we know for certain is that Atlas is not behaving like any comet we've studied before. The data is real, the anomalies are real, the questions are real, and the clock is ticking. Atlas is moving away from us. Every day it gets fainter and harder to observe. If we're going to solve this mystery, we need to act now. If you watch to the end, let me know your theories about 3i Atlas and what you think about this newest anomaly revealed after the long silence from NASA. Also, please drop me a like and subscribe, and I wish you a blessed day. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now, where we break down the technological hypothesis in detail and explain exactly how an artificial probe could produce the behaviors we're seeing. I'll see you there.